This is a DSLR camera. But what is a DSLR camera? Let's look into it. Let's start with what DSLR stands for. DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. Let's start with digital. So digital refers to the type of sensor in modern DSLR cameras. It's a digital sensor. It used to be film sensors, and these were just SLRs, which refers to the second part, single lens reflex. This refers to the mirror inside the camera that shows the same image that your camera will take to your eye through the viewfinder. In this diagram, we can see what happens. So light enters through the lens, goes through the aperture, hits the mirror, goes up into the pentaprism, and then comes out the viewfinder. When you're ready to take a picture, you press the shutter button, this mirror flips up, the shutter flips up, and exposes the sensor, and then your camera takes the picture. You may be familiar with the famous clicking noise that a camera makes. This is not the shutter. This is the mirror inside DSLRs. This is why mirrorless cameras are much quieter. The shutter makes a noise when it goes up, but it's not anywhere as close to the mirror going up and down. Next, let's talk about some of the common features of DSLR cameras. The first is phase detection autofocus. Phase detection autofocus operates based on a calculation which measures the difference between two images. So inside your DSLR camera, there will be two apertures that lead to the phase detection sensor. These two apertures measure the light coming from different sides of the lens. When the light from these two apertures comes together, the lens is in focus. If they are disparate, the lens needs to move to get into focus. This is shown by this chart. This is when focus is too near. You can tell that the light from the two apertures is not in sync. Here is where it's correctly in focus. The light from the two apertures is in sync. This is basically how phase detection autofocus works. The second key feature that distinguishes DSLR cameras from things like point-and-shoot cameras and phone cameras is having interchangeable lenses. Here is an image showing all of the EF lenses in Canon's lineup. Those are the lenses that work on Canon's full-frame cameras, like this one here, the 60 Mark II. As you can tell, there are many lenses. The advantage of this is having specificity for any situation. Whether you need to take a shot 100 yards away or 2 inches away, there's a lens for that. This is a major advantage over smartphones and point-and-shoot cameras. When a camera manufacturer makes lenses, they have to choose between all these different competing interests. What focal length they want to have, whether they want it to be a zoom lens or a prime lens, meaning one or many different focal lengths, whether they want a wide aperture or a wide range of apertures, whether they want it to be image stabilized, weather sealed, how much sharpness they want it to have. Obviously, all lenses want to have lots of sharpness, but it comes at a cost, making price a factor. As you can tell, there are many competing interests when it comes to designing a lens, which makes it useful to be able to change your lens out so that you can get the correct lens for the correct situation. Next, let's talk about sensor sizes. So DSLRs usually come in one of two sensor sizes, APS-C and full frame. Full frame comes from the old world of film when it was shot on 35mm film rolls. APS-C sensors are just a little bit smaller. This chart shows some of the many different sensor sizes. In the top we have full frame, and then in the second row we have APS-H and APS-C. These are just kind of different designations for different brands, but they're roughly the same size. Next, we have smaller sensor sizes, which are found in micro four thirds cameras, like the one I'm filming on, and point-and-shoot cameras, and all the way down to smartphone cameras. There are some advantages to having a larger sensor size. Let's talk about that next. One of those advantages is depth of field. In larger sensors, like the full-frame one, my Canon 6D Mark II, you have more capacity for shallower depth of field. These two images demonstrate that capacity. The one on the left is shot using my 6D Mark II at f8, and the one on the right is shot using my Panasonic Lumix G7, also at f8. You can tell there's a difference in depth of field. On the left, the trees are much blurrier, you can't even see the whole plant in focus, while on the right, the one with the micro four thirds sensor, the G7, has almost the entire plant in focus, and the trees are much less blurry. ISO also is more effective on larger sensors because it results in less noise. But that's a topic for a different video. Another thing I'd like to talk about quickly is battery life. DSLRs, like this one, have a much longer battery life than mirrorless cameras. This is for a couple reasons. One is DSLRs are much larger than mirrorless cameras, so there's more space for a larger battery. Number two is sensor. The sensor in a DSLR is not always in operation, like it is in a mirrorless camera, which often has live view and is always in operation to tell what the picture is going to look like. While in DSLRs, the mirror just shows the image through the viewfinder. The final key characteristic of DSLR cameras that I'd like to talk about today is many accessories. Both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras have all kinds of accessories, including interchangeable lenses, monopods, tripods, flash speed lights, spotlights, remote triggers, all kinds of accessories. These sorts of accessories make it easier to take better photos, and to take photos in varying conditions. Alright, so in conclusion, DSLRs are very capable cameras that often have larger sensor sizes than things like point and shoot, and even some mirrorless cameras, certainly smartphone cameras, which offer advantages such as shallower depth of field and greater ISO performance. They also have tremendous battery life, often offer features like weather sealing, and are usually ruggedly designed. They also have a large, dependable line of interchangeable lenses. Compared to mirrorless cameras, DSLR autofocus is a little bit worse, but this is not a fatal flaw. Mirrorless may be the way of the future, but DSLRs still have a lot to offer now. Thanks for watching.